The Senate this week took up the issue of raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Now, Democrats were joined in this vote by a single Republican to vote yes on this bill. Surprisingly, it was Bob Corker from Tennessee. But that, of course, was not enough to break a Republican filibuster, as they needed about 60 votes to proceed. The measure only received about 54 votes in support. Now, Harry Reid, of course, had to vote no, so we could bring it back in a procedural measure. Now, I have to point out that even had it passed through the Senate, this bill was so unlikely to pass it was so unlikely to be taken up by the House and passed. So for a bill, it was sort of DOA. Now, Republicans, of course, have made the usual argument defending their decision to filibuster the bill, saying, of course, that it will hurt small businesses, destroy the economy, despite how there is actually no actual evidence of that happened, since we've raised the minimum wage before, and somehow there were still actually jobs. But still, Republicans argued that there were better ways to increase the wages of Americans, but declined to give any specifics. Now, Democrats say they're going to bring the vote up again, and I hope they do. But before we go to that, I want to go to my panel and ask you guys what you think.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think as you said, it was going to be dead on arrival. It wasn't going to get past. It could have got past the Senate. No way was it going to get past the House. But the whole point of the Democrats kind of bringing this up, and hopefully they will now consistently bring this up, is that it gets the Republicans, and there are Democrats who have voted against it as well, it gets them on the record. So when it comes round to, I mean, it's too late now for 2014, when it comes to 2016, and they've had kind of 5 votes on this, they have another 8 votes on this, then they've got it on the record, and they can start running political campaign ads saying, look, kind of, Senator or Representative such and such has voted against raising the minimum wage 8 times, 10 times, and that will have an effect on a number of people. And there's people like, I think Senator Tom Coburn, who's saying, this is ludicrous, we shouldn't have a minimum wage at all, we should just let the free market decide. Free markets are brilliant. I mean, if you're going to set a minimum wage, why have they chosen this kind of $10.10? Why didn't they choose $22 or $100? Why don't they just set no limit whatsoever? And it's like, but that's not the point. The point is just trying to get people a decent minimum wage. And if you're going to vote against it, then all of your constituents who are working on minimum wage jobs, they're not going to like you. Anyone who's on a minimum wage job in Tom Coburn's state, they should be voting against him in the next election cycle with him up for election.
Right. Sean, what do you think?
Well, first, it's not too late for the 2014 elections. They're in November. But, yeah, other than that, like, I kind of agree with what Steven said, that this is, like, it's a good way to get it on record because we know it's not going to pass the House, and, you'll be able to run ads against the politicians that voted against this. The Harry Reid voting no might have been a procedural issue. Like,
it is.
No, I'm saying 100% sure it's a procedural issue, but even though that's the case, that will appear in some campaign ads eventually against Harry Reid. Like, if he was up for election this go-around, then that would appear against him. They'll be like, he thinks he's progressive, but he voted for no on the minimum wage and all that.
But that would be an example of Republicans trying to be populist.
Yeah, but they'll campaign. They campaigned on Obama cutting Medicare. Yeah. Remember when it was in the Ryan budget, the same cut. Yeah, like, so overall, like, this is just, it's really a political move. Like, the Democrats in the Senate want to vote for this. This is technically not a vote. This is a vote to bring the bill to the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Republicans don't want it on record, and the Democrats are trying to get it on record for the election time. Like, it has no chance of passing the House. So this is like political maneuvering.
Right. And there's a couple of quotes from some of the different Republicans that voted against it. Rob Portman, of course. Rob Portman said he'd support something, a minimum wage that was a little bit higher, but he says on the 10-10, it's too high, too fast. Now, you could make the argument, I guess, that it might be too fast, but too high? No way. 1010 is like the bare minimum to get by and maybe get off government assistance. Now, to get to your other point, Senator Susan Collins, she's from a Republican from Maine. She says she supports a reasonable increase, but she complained that the Democrats sought to force the 1010 through without compromise or debate. Now, this is kind of funny because Susan Collins voted against this, against bringing it to debate. And here's something that's sort of lost on this on people. As you pointed out, Sean, this wasn't a vote to the bill for the bill itself. It was a vote to bring this up for a debate. And so, to get to all of your points, definitely agree. This is the score of political points, and to get Democrats fired up for the midterms. Because go ahead.
Good. Okay, fine. I was going to say, just on back, it makes kind of political sense, but it also makes media sense as well. Because if the Democrats are going to keep bringing this up, and one hopes that is what they're going to do, then journalists are going to have to start asking. The cable news companies are going to have to start asking, why do you keep bringing this up? Why do you keep bringing this up? And for the kind of the Fox News kind of leaning type journalists, they're going to say, like, why do you keep bringing this up? Why are you wasting so much time? And then hopefully the more eloquent Democrats will kind of say, well, we want to raise minimum wage because people, and they'll be able to get their talking points across. And for the kind of left-leaning MSNBC, then that just kind of, they can just throw up softballs, which they will do for Democrats on this issue anyway. So overall, it just makes great political and media strategical sense to then to just bring this up again and again and again, just like the Republicans tried to do with Obamacare.
Exactly, because I mean, the political race going into to the midterms. I mean, you guys remember Nate Silver, right? Who predicted using math and statistical analysis the results of 2012. Well, he predicted that the Democrats are going to lose seats in the Senate, so they're going to lose the Senate. So this is definitely them trying to avoid that fate. And just like you said, if I were Harry Reid, I'd definitely borrow that book from the GOP's playbook. That, Obamacare, continue voting. I just fucking ram this bill down their throat over and over and over again for exactly what you said. It keeps it in the news, and they're gonna, Republicans are gonna have to defend it, and Democrats can sit there and say, "I fought for you."
Well, I mean, the thing is as well is that the Republicans are saying that if you raise minimum wage to, if it's kind of $10.10 or $20 or whatever, that it's going to cost jobs. And even raising it to $10.10, it will cost some jobs, and kind of numbers have been floated about around 500,000 jobs. But the reason for that is, I mean, you can twist numbers however you want. And one of the large driving factors to that decrease in jobs is because people won't have to be working 2 jobs or 3 jobs to try and get by. They may only have to have that 1 job now if they have a decent minimum wage. So there may be less people working jobs, but that's because they don't need to because of this minimum wage increase. So that's one. I mean, yes, some small companies will probably let go of a few people, but at the end of the day, you've got to increase minimum wage. It makes economic sense, it makes policy sense, it makes strategic sense for the Democrats. So as you said, they've just got to keep ramming this idea home and just keep doing it until it's eventually passed.
Yeah,
well,
go ahead, Sean.
It makes strategic sense from a policy point of view because we've seen this before, is that you take an issue that's not a gigantic issue. It's very rarely this is somebody's #1 issue, the minimum wage, and you keep bringing it up until people start to care about it and start to vote on it. So, like, it makes sense from a strategic point of view, but, like, a lot of our businesses are small businesses, and a lot of them will be negatively impacted by this. Like, to me, the minimum wage actually clearly, like, the increasing the minimum wage is better for bigger companies than smaller companies, which is weird. That Walmart is so against it because they get all the benefits because they have the economies of scale to deal with that kind of increase. So as far as for the economy and all that, that's more debatable. But as a political strategy, it's sold as helping poor people. So it's basic. I would do the same thing if I was the Democrats, and I felt like I was gonna lose this election.
Right. And speaking on terms of course policy and everything like that, it's It's a good policy, and the fact that we'll be losing some jobs in the short term, as a long-term policy, the increased spending power of people that are now going to have a lot more money to spend will increase jobs in the long term. So there's going to be some short-term pain, right? But there will be long-term gain. And the Republicans, as part of their strategy, is just to kind of amplify that, oh, it's going to cost jobs, it's going to cost jobs, CBO report to prove it. Yeah, but in the short term, you're correct. But when you look at the long term, which this is why messaging is so crappy for the Democrats, because liberals are right on this issue, but people look at things so short term because that's the way we're wired to look at short term things, that a lot of people don't understand the long term effects of raising the minimum wage.
I mean, like, my final point is that if one has to feel sorry for Republicans, is that they can't agree with anything that the Democrats put forward. Their position, we have to be against whatever they put forward. And so if Democrats want to raise the minimum wage, we're against raising it. And the problem there as well is it's a bit similar to the Affordable Care Act, is that I'm sure many Republicans know, not the stupid people like Louis Gohmert and stuff, but some of the more sensible and reasonable ones, even though they're fighting against it, they know that if the minimum wage gets raised, then it's going to be attributed as a success and a good thing that the Democrats have done, and the Republicans know it will look even worse on them. So they don't want it to rise, because they know as soon as it does rise, then it's going to be a huge kind of positive tick when it comes to voting for Democrats in 2016.
Yeah, and so they've, the Republicans have really painted themselves into a corner when it comes to this. So, I mean, politically, it's sort of a genius move.